anybody else in the world is my ability to be organized and my ability to be strategic. And that helped me during the QE. Apparently, and you'd have to verify with Andy, but apparently I scored the highest on the QE, methods QE. And I definitely.
So which methods QE was that? You know, the QE's changed over the years, and
so
was that the one where you wrote a proposal?
No, this was the one where they gave us like 10, 15 different topics, and we got three of the topics to answer questions.
And then you had to pick two you had to pick two out of the three when you were answering the questions.
So I passed. I was happy about that, but I never felt like particularly strong as a methodologist. I still don't. But UNC is also sort of rigorous in terms of their methodology. So I guess at the end of the day, like
you have to be.
Yeah,
That's right.
I have to be because I'm with UNC.
That's right.
But when I got to the sort of done with the required classes and you can take the things that you're interested in, that's when I really started to, I think, fall in love with epi. Because I was able to take, Carrie North's genetic class. I took, the cancer class with Bob Milliken, and then advanced cancer epidemiology with Andy Ocean, and, diet and nutrition and obesity, and sort of all the things that I really like to think about. And was encouraged by Meharry to write a predoctoral grant. I was on the training grant, but it wouldn't hurt, and so I put a proposal together.
Which was for an F31.
This is like an F31, but this was through the DoD. So it was a DoD breast cancer pre-doctoral training award, and so I put that proposal together while I was taking Bob's class, Carrie's class, Andy's class, and Steve Cole's class, and Meharry's grant writing class. It was crazy, but my mom said, "This is how you work best." So I was like, okay, I can do this. And I was buying a house. So I put the proposal together over my spring break and had no idea, going through OSR and the budgets and this and that. So I learned on the fly, and I actually got it. I got it. And so that doctoral award supported me during the out years after I rolled off the training grant. And just really grateful to Meharry for walking me through sort of the steps, because I had no clue. I knew my science, but I didn't think about all these other pieces, like writing the training plan and who were mentors, etc. So she was really, and she was just really good in general with storytelling. I love to talk to people and hear about stories, which is why I think that this is such a fabulous thing, because Meharry and I would have a 30-minute meeting and it would take 2 hours. And literally the science would take 30 minutes, but then she'd tell me about this experience and that experience, and sometimes I'd be like, Meharry, I need to go study. I can't just sit up here and talk to you. But now as faculty, a lot of those stories and things she told me resonate, or I'll say, oh, I remember Meharry saying something about this, or contact this person. And so I appreciate that, because those are now, they're things that I have in my memory bank that I can pull from. And not all faculty are that open and willing to share. So that's something that I've tried to take with me as a faculty person. The students know, if I come into Lauren's office and I ask her a question, I'm going to get an honest answer. I'm not going to be around the bush. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, because at the end of the day, this is your career, and you need to know with complete transparency what you're getting yourself into. So I was really appreciative of her. Bob Milliken was also a mentor on the genetic side, and he was just really thoughtful. I admired him a whole lot. Really thoughtful about sort of approaches, and not always doing what's sexy in the field, but doing what feels right, what's meaningful to you. I think this is when we had this tug of war between candidate gene and GWAS. And he was very much a candidate gene advocate, go with the biologic plausibility, go with your predetermined mechanisms, forget multiple comparisons. Address it, but if you have a priori hypothesis, go with that. Whereas, Carrie North, who was teaching genetic epidemiology, was all about GWAS and, chance findings and Bonferroni and, et cetera. And so it was just nice to see this push and pull and be able to thoughtfully think about sort of where I was on that
spectrum.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just a really interesting place to be. Gillings donated the $50 million during the time that I was there, and I think it was a time of growth, and I met lots of great people as a doctoral student. Even Mike O'Malley, met him when I was taking his class, and got a chance to really get connected in epi, and that's when I really started to feel like I was a epidemiologist. My first paper that I wrote with Meharry, very first paper, ended up in cancer, the ACS's.
Was that from your dissertation? Or?
That was just other work that I was doing. Ended up in cancer, and then all of a sudden the media frenzy around that paper just took off. So I interviewed with Time Magazine, New York Times, LA Times. It was crazy. And this was my first paper, and Meharry was like, I was like, these people are calling. She's like, you can do it. You can do it. Just talk to them. You can do it. And she sort of just was like, you got it. And so, the experience was just great. And I was appreciative of the fact that she trusted me. She knew I knew my science and gave me that experience. Yeah.
Now, I wish I knew. I don't know Meharry, do I? Have I ever met her?
I think you've probably met her, literally met her.
Yeah, that's it.
Not
I don't pay a lot.
If you get back to Chapel Hill, we'll make sure you spend some time with her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's tough. And so a lot of students couldn't handle her because she had high expectations, and Meharry was a straight shooter. And so if you had, if you were sensitive in any way, etc., she just was not the mentor for you. But after going through Vanderbilt and then Meharry, I was like, there is nothing that you can say or do that is going to hurt my feelings. Like, I've heard it all. I've been through a lot. I'm only 22 at the time. Like, say whatever you need to say. I'll take it. I can filter through. And so it worked for me. It didn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
It worked for me.
Yeah. No, I think that's the best kind of mentor to have. Yeah, my mentor, Gladys Reynolds, who was here at Emory, she was like that. Pushed me when I didn't want to be pushed.
Yep.
So it's good.
And a mentor that gets to know you. Like, Meharry took the time to know me. She knew I was a dancer. Yeah. She knew, things that were happening with my family. She just took the time to know me as a person, which I think makes you a better mentor when you know the challenges that your student is facing, sort of life struggles. And I felt comfortable going to her and saying, okay, I kind of want to start a family. Like, when should I be doing this? And she's like, you have the DOD. Like, let's finish your dissertation and give you time to, like, be a mom. So I literally finished my dissertation in May of 2012. And I sat on it until December, and I defended, but I defended right after the deadline for a December graduation, and so I actually didn't graduate until May of 13. But I had my first baby in July of 12, so I had the whole first year to be with my child and to start to apply for postdoctoral grants. And at the same time, Meharry and I were writing papers. So I probably shouldn't admit this on camera, but it looked like I was a really productive postdoc because I was only in a postdoc for 18 months. But really what it was that I had that year of time from the time I finished my dissertation to the time I officially graduated where I was writing papers, doing analyses, so that when I became a postdoc, everything was ready to go. And so that was, I'm a strategic thinker. So it was in part strategic, but it was also having the support of someone that kind of knew me and knew what my goals were and knew the competing demands that I was going to have a baby, I was going to be a mom, etc. So I think that's important as a mentor,
that's
too.
good.
Yeah.
I messed up my postdoc, but I did my postdoc in biostat at Harvard, and I was supposed to write this textbook, and I never finished it. 127 pages done, and I still didn't.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I just stopped. Because I'm not like you. I'm not, organizing. I have flashes of insight, if you will, and I want to create things, and I do that. But if I get bored with something, no matter how important it is, I'm done.
Yeah.
I get bored. So I wish I was more disciplined, but I'm not, it's the way I've always been. The frustration of my mother, I've just been like that, so. But this is good. So how did you end up at Emory? What was that just because of all the work that you had at?
No, so.
Excuse me, just before we get to Emory, I was going to ask Nancy Kolb and Carmen Woody, anything you have to say about them that would be.
Yeah, Nancy, so besides Serene Yamsiri, Nancy was this sort of second person I really met at UNC's campus. And Chris, my husband, went with me to Nancy's office to meet, and she was just so like welcoming and all-knowing. And I learned very quickly as a student, the faculty are great. You need to know the faculty. They're going to write your letters of recommendation. But the person that's going to get you through this program is a Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I went by to chat with Nancy often. I just wanted to make sure I always stayed on her radar. And Nancy was also really good at, if you had a problem, sending you to the right person for help. Whether it's a student or a faculty person or someone outside of the campus. And then Carmen, I think, sort of kept everybody on track. She signed off on my proposal documents that I was supposed to submit like a week in advance that I didn't because I didn't know. So, you know, those people just facilitate processes. And in contrast to Meharry, where there was no person to go to and talk to about, you know, your RA, your funding, you know, what class to take, who should I talk to about this, I'm having this issue. I always felt like I could go to them, and if they didn't know the answer, they were going to send me to the right people. So I felt like there was another sort of layer of support. So I was really sad when Nancy left, but I had gotten through as a student, so I was like, I'm lucky, because at least I had her the entire time. But it also taught me, like when I got to Emory, I was like, who is the Nancy here? Because they exist, and it's Jenna Black, and she's like literally my best friend in the EPI department because I go to her for everything. And so the experience with Nancy, I think, taught me early about like who to go to for what, who's all knowing, who really sort of drives the department.
Anybody else at UNC you want to mention before we move on to Emory? You mentioned Mike O'Malley briefly.
Yeah, Mike O'Malley. You know, I said it at his memorial. Yeah, I was in his, how was this class called? Yeah, the Cancer Prevention Control class. It's probably not called that. But Mike and I, we had a connection because he grew up in Atlanta. He went to school at Druid Hills, which is literally like half a mile down the road. And he knew Atlanta. He asked what school I went to. I told him Cedar Grove. And I think he knew like the area that I grew up in. And like he understood. And it was not a said thing. It was sort of an unsaid thing. And Mike, in a lot of ways, like Meharry, was also very interested, especially once I became a postdoc and was on the Cancer Prevention Control Fellowship, wanted to make sure we were being productive, wanted to make sure we were hitting our metrics because obviously they needed to have that for funding, but he also was very interested in making sure that I was doing okay as a person, that I was doing okay as a mom, and you know, he knew I was a dancer, he knew I was interested in real estate, he knew about all these things. And I think what was amazing about Mike is that he had this connection with a lot of people, and it boggles my mind to this day how he remembered the level of detail about people's lives. You know, my first Christmas with Jaden, he sent me a note, and through email he said, I really hope you're enjoying your first Christmas with your child. This is a special moment. And I'm like, he was born in July. Like, who thinks about that by the time it's December, right? 6 months later. But the time that the fact that he took the time to send me that note, I think just really speaks to his character and the person that he was. So Michael, I mentioned Bob, I mentioned Carrie North, Andy Olshan, I sort of mentioned in passing, but he was my chair, but he was also on my dissertation committee. And Andy, he's a harder sort of egg to break. He's very like stern, and he has this aura about him. But I remember when I started my postdoc going to Andy and saying, you know, what should I be thinking about? Should I be thinking about writing a case? Should I be thinking, like, what should I be doing, Andy? Like, you're a chair of a department. Tell me, like, what I should do. And that was when I think our relationship sort of changed, because then he was sort of like me, like very strategic. Well, what is it that you want? Well, if you want this, then let's do this. If you want that, then let's do that. And so I appreciated having somebody in the position across the table I was going to find myself in, a chair, to tell me specifically what I should be doing, what I should be thinking about, how I should be networking, who I should be talking to. And so Andy was very integral in helping me sort of get to that next level. Andy was like, everybody's worried about K's. Don't worry about a K. I'm like, really, Andy? They say that you should have a K. No, apply for jobs. Apply for jobs. The department is supposed to find talent, and they're supposed to invest in that talent. apply for jobs. If you're good, you'll get a job. You can write the K, but don't worry about the K. And so I took his advice, even though it was contrary to what everybody else was telling me, and he was right. So yeah, is anybody else I want to mention? I think those are sort of the big players.
I have to ask about your teaching experience.
Of course you do.
And you say what you want, but
yeah, I was really excited about teaching, and all the students were like TA for 715 or 710, and I could have done that, but I think what really piqued my interest about FE 600, which Vic was the instructor for, was that it wasn't geared towards FE majors. And one of the things I like in teaching is convincing people that something is important and useful to them, and I felt like 600 was an opportunity to do that. I also like the fact that there were these sections where I had the opportunity and the chance to lead. I love teaching, and so I've had to be very careful as a faculty to not take too much on, but I've been a teacher my entire life. When I was 12 years old, I got certified as a swimming instructor, and then I got certified as a lifeguard. When I was in college, I was a dancer, and I eventually went from a dancer to a choreographer, and I didn't want to be on stage. Like, I like being in the background of things. I like giving people, I always say teaching is amazing because you give a gift to someone that can never be taken away, which is knowledge. And so I really enjoyed my teaching experience. I enjoyed my students. Afterwards they kept in contact with me, and I think my experience teaching at 600 validated the fact that I wanted to go into academia.
Well, you were really a special TA. I mean, in terms of those labs, you had this game that you played with the students, and you gave it to me later to pass on to others, but I don't think I've been able to give it to anybody else. I mean, I think I told some people about it, but
yeah.
you wanted to tell people about it?
Yeah, well, I don't remember.
It was a quiz program kind of thing.
Yeah, it was like an epi web, and so they were trying to accrue points, but to get to some of the higher point questions, they had to go through the earlier ones.
And so each lab was competing with each other?
Yeah, there were groups in labs, and then 2 groups in each lab and 2 labs, and so they were all competing to accrue enough points. And I think it's just one of my teaching styles. I think when people are motivated enough to do something, then they'll do it. And a lot of times I think in classes it's like you go, you sit, you listen, and then you show that you listened. But there's nothing that's really sort of pushing people to want to learn more. And so that was my way of doing that. I felt like it was corny, but they loved it. They enjoyed it. So yeah, I'm always trying to think of innovative ways to teach. And I think in general, even as a faculty now, like ways to like break down walls and barriers, because the traditional paradigm for teachers, like you teach, you listen, I speak, right? And then for faculty student advising, it's like, I'm the faculty, you're a student, I'm mentoring you, you learn, right? But I just sort of think that as a lifelong learner, as a person that has a PhD, I really think that the process is more collaborative.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And in order to get students, and I'm pointing out here because this is where the PhD students sit, in order to get them to think like an independent scientist, you have to start to treat them like independent scientists from the beginning. And so the game was my way of sort of breaking down that wall. Like, I've been up here lecturing, right? But now let's just do something together. Let's work through this web together. And I do the same thing with my classes now. And then my students, anybody, master's students, PhD student, even an undergrad student that comes and decides they want to work with me, the first thing I say is, you are not working for me. You are working with me, because you bring things to the table that I wouldn't have thought of. You're going to get skills from me. And so we're both learning from each other. My dad used to always tell me, work with people that are smarter than you, because then you're always growing. And so I've tried to take that sort of saying into like my everyday life. But I think with the games, the students just really appreciate it. One, the ability to apply their knowledge, but 2, it's teamwork. We're all working together to figure out like this epi web and what the answer to the question is. So.
It's about an hour now. Maybe this would be a good time to end it, or I don't know. I'm mostly, of course, interested in the UNC part.
Yeah.
I see.
So that's why.
So we got that part.
Yeah, right, yeah.
We'll save Emory for another.
Yeah. There's one thing. When I was, we formed the Black Students Group when I came. Because before me, there weren't enough Black to form the group. at UNT.
Oh, at UNC, okay.
And there was never anything. I was the Black Student Union at Emory. So and we did two things. One was we created a minority health conference. Mm-hmm. The second thing was we created a thing called the Survival Committee.
Okay.
So me and Jim Morrell, who was a biostatistician, and I was epi, but also took a lot of biostat. And the focus of the committee was to make sure that all Black students passed with at least a B or an H, whatever, you know. And that worked well. I mean, after we formed that committee, every Black student finished and did well. And then it just died when Jim and I left.
Yeah.
You know, and it seems to me that one of the more important experiences, and it doesn't have to be specifically Black, but that was, you know, we came out of the 60s, so it was all Black.
Yeah.
But that experience of forming a group, a study group, was such an important experience, and for some reason it is dissipated right now. And you formed it without even knowing probably that we had this thing before. Yeah. So what was it that got you all to think about forming a study group?
Well, one, we were together all the time, and so it just made sense.
Yeah.
You know, who was in that group, I think is different, but it made sense that if we're together and we're taking these classes together, and you're really good at methods, I'm really good at this, you're really good at that, and we all come from these diverse experiences, then why not